Oh no, hellos, and welcome back to another card v card videos. And today we're taking a look at two cards: Fires of Invention and freaking Wilderness Reclamation. So we're gonna face off these two enchantments that have been eponymous for, well, ruining formats altogether, and we're gonna see which one wins and which one loses. But to be fair, we both lose. We all lose in this. But you know what? I'm still gonna match these guys to a fight. So we'll see what wins. But we'll do the first card first, which is Fires of Invention. Yeah, I think everyone's heard of this spell. It's you can only cast spells during your turn and no more than two. And people thought, oh, it's a downside. But wait, you may cast spells with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands without paying their mana cost. Holy crap! So you're telling me every land I have, I'm able to cast two spells for the amount of lands I have without paying their mana cost. Well, the problem with Fires of Invention's deck is you can break parity of color. So you can run cards like Niv Mizzet and have, well, you can have 6 swamps in play with Fires of Invention and you can cast it without paying that color restriction. So Fires of Invention had one problem, and that was color restriction. The second problem is it was too easy for creatures to activate their abilities, like Kenrith. Like, you can cast him for free, but then activate his abilities immediately. So there was also another issue with that. The third issue is that there was really no restriction to what decks you can play with ramp. So let's say you ramped, like with Cultivate, okay? Usually you are mana behind and at card disadvantage because those lands come in tapped. However, with Fires of Invention, it doesn't matter if they're tapped or not. It just matters if they're in play. So you can always cast Ugin really freaking early if it was, well, if Fires of Invention was still legal, like in Historic. So yeah, there's that. But recently Fires of Invention's actually been seen play and a little bit of play in Pioneer. Very nichely though, so it's just in its own Fires of Invention build. But what I've seen the most interesting decks actually been played is actually Fires of Invention decks in Modern, where they actually use Fires of Invention and suspend Balance. Basically, Balance is like that card, you know, that's banned in Vintage, but it's Modern's version of Balance. So the point of the deck is you balance out your deck, and all the lands are gone. You have Fires of Invention though. The only cards like Fires of Invention. The opponent doesn't have any lands or barely any lands, and you still have advantage with using, well, Fires of Invention with your lands. There's also other decks that try to use Fires of Invention to cast like 0 mana spells, but that's the most common one I've seen. And yeah, it's nasty. I don't like the deck because you get out a bunch of creatures and you get out a bunch of land. It's just not fun. It's not fun because you just get a benefit off of it and they don't. So yeah. But Fires of Invention was broken at Standard, and that's what really pushed its level, and Historic, of course, too. But it could actually see a ban in Pioneer, but it's just not relevant enough because of all the control decks in Pioneer. But that can change in any moment now, so anything can really happen, honestly. So, but yeah, let's move on to our next contender. He's in the ring, and well, he has to deal with the fire, but there's no problem with the fire if you're Wilderness Reclamation. Oh yes, so it's basically a simple ability, and it costs the same as, well, Fires of Invention, except it's a green. And at the beginning of your end step, just untap all lands you control. So yeah, you just untap all lands you control every time you end your turn. Now, why would this be a problem, you might ask? Well, it's first, not legendary. Fires of Invention didn't really need to be legendary because there was no point of it just being legendary. This should have been legendary. That's the first issue. The second issue is you can stack the abilities on the stack, so you can always get mana in return. So if you have untapped lands, you can tap it in response and untap it again and get insane advantage off of it. I mean, I remember when Wilderness Reclamation's decks wouldn't even like use it to just cast a big X spell on your opponent, which was usually well, Electrolyze, or not Electrolyze, that X spell, that big boom X spell, basically, that kills your opponent. Yeah, that card on the screen. So yeah, but it was also used for numerous reasons, like maybe in flash decks, or you're just holding up mana for a counterspell. You play your Teferi, play your Wilderness Reclamation, you got untapped lands, you can counter anything you want. I mean, it's virtually a free counterspell if you cast this damn card. That's the second problem with the card. Third problem with the card is honestly the when it says untap lands. Now you can untap a lot of lands with this, but what I would suggest you untap it with is with Lotus Field because you can get so much mana off of it. But also you can use abilities like kind of the same with Wilderness Reclamation, except with no downside. The only downside is you have to wait for your end step. So yeah, I mean, people could just remove the card when it comes to your end step. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty bad. So, but Wilderness Reclamation did see play in Pioneer. I think it got banned though, so, and also it got banned in Historic. So yeah. Oh boy. Now you may be thinking to yourself, well, obviously Wilderness Reclamation wins because it's banned in most formats, but this is my list. Well, we'll get into it. Who wins and who loses. I'll be the deciding factor in that. You guys can decide in the comments below, but yeah. So now we're going to compare the cards and see which one seems stronger. So, Fires of Invention versus Wilderness Reclamation. Now, people may argue that getting 2 spells per turn is pretty broken, and without pain and mana cost, that's pretty nice. You also get the benefit that you don't have to have your certain colors out to use it, so that's pretty good. The only downside is you gotta wait for your opponent. You can't cast spells on their turn, so you gotta wait. And you can only cast 2 spells, so it's not really a downside because obviously 2 spells is pretty much enough for the Fighters of Invention, but that's still a downside. Now with Wilderness Reclamation's downside, the only downside is you have to wait until your end step, which, be it as it may, it is kind of a downside if you think about it. If you get to your end step, you have to play everything at instant speed. Now, granted, there was Teferi, so it kind of lock out the whole point of the opponent playing instant spells. But it's kind of a downside and kind of not. And you still have to pay for the spells, unlike with Fires of Invention. And you had to have a certain color with it, which was usually Simic. So it's really hard to compare these cards. They're both pretty broken and they're both pretty badass. So it's gonna come down to what is the better deck in the end, and what they have punching. Okay, so Fires of Invention, you have great spells. You can cast anything you want, 2 a turn. It's pretty good. Well, for your turn at least. And with Wilderness Reclamation, you can go nuts with lands and just bolt your opponent's face off. Well, it's pretty nice. So, who do I think is going to win this doozy of a battle? Okay, I'm going crazy. It is definitely Wilderness Reclamation, by far. Now, I'm not saying Fires of Invention is not bad. Fires of Invention is great and all. It's just, there's a ceiling for Fires of Invention that I think Wilderness Reclamation kind of breaks. And that is instant speed stuff. And I think the most important part about Magic nowadays, especially in competitive, is always having disruption. With Fires of Invention, you kind of had to be the middleman. Now granted, with Fires of Invention, they were really desperate to get to Fires of Invention that they would even run cards that drew them really fast, like that Sphinx. So it was basically a card you had to get, and if you didn't get it in time, it was kind of a bummer. It's kind of the same with Wilderness Reclamation, but it can always slot into a deck like Simic Flash or those other archetypes like Band Control, where it's just better in the long run. Now don't get me wrong, I'm not saying Fires of Invention is bad. It's a really good card. Really busted too. But I think Wilderness Reclamation just takes it because of its versatility. And sure, you have to wait for your end step. But honestly, if you have 4 fucking Wilderness Reclamations to play, you're gonna win the game. And you're gonna bolt your opponent's face off usually. I actually played this in a deck, and it was Songs of Creation, and I used Wilderness Reclamation to play all my adventure cells with Songs of Creation, and drew a crap ton of cards with a combo win. So yeah. So overall, the winner and the clear card to be broken as all shit is Wilderness Reclamation, hands down. I mean, honestly, with that ability, you can go far with it. And with Fires of Invention, you really have to rely on the big buffy creatures and stuff. So yeah, Wilderness Reclamation, you're not gonna get burned down by these Fires of Invention. Fires ain't good enough for this wilderness. So yeah, anyways guys, what do you guys think? Do you think Fires of Invention stood a chance and should have won? Let me know in the comments below, but that's what I think. So yeah. Anyways guys, I hope you guys had a wonderful rest of the day or night. And I'll see you guys in the next video or stream. Bye and peace.